The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, one that's not afraid to give you the honest truth. We have back with us today Dr. Michelle Perro. What an honor. Welcome, Michelle.
Paul, hello, good morning. Nice to see you again.
It's so great to have you on the show. So you are my favorite environmental pediatrician, and I love your new book, Making Our Children Well, a parent's guidebook, empowering healthy families with nutrition and homeopathy. We covered it in our last episode, and there's so much in there. Today, I wanted us to focus on environmental pediatrics for pediatricians, but also it's going to include what do we do as parents and families. I went to some environmental pediatric conferences, and I was always overwhelmed with all the information I was sort of picking up. I don't think this is an area of medicine that's well understood by most pediatricians. How can we bring this to medical education, and how can we reach the pediatricians that are out there in the trenches now?
Paradoxical, isn't it, Paul, that what's driving the chronic disease epidemic in our children is environmentally induced? And yet, here we are, the people who deliver child care are not being educated, even though you and I trained a long time ago, that this environmental medicine education piece has not been, as far as my knowledge, and perhaps some schools are doing it, into the curriculum as one of the leading subjects that should be covered. So you get a year of pharmacology, a year of microbiology, a couple of hours in nutrition. Maybe it's a little better now in some schools. And environmental medicine is really kind of an afterthought or an elective or something you might take a week of at some point. So how do we bring this into the forefront? The AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, which I'm not a supporter, I'm afraid to say, occasionally, and to their credit, does do some articles on environmental medicine. And there are some pediatricians who are writing on this, Dr. Phil Landrigan and some folks over at Mount Sinai, New York, my alma mater. It's not enough, and it's not getting into the clinics where the medicine is being practiced. So it's not being taught. And the other thing is sometimes these types of intakes, questionnaires, what you have to ask parents take time. And pediatricians in some HMOs, for example, like Kaiser, are given 4 or 5 patients an hour. And so there isn't the time allowed to develop these conversations. So that's an issue within the educational piece and the practice piece. So medical conferences need to be include this. We do a good job at MAPS, which is the Medical Association Pediatric Special Needs, where I've been a speaker before in the past. They bring a lot of environmental medicine in. Younger pediatricians are attending. It's not enough. What is happening is pediatricians now, many are women. I don't know the exact number, but I think the majority of pediatricians are women. When they are having children and their children are ill, they're all of a sudden, unfortunately, when it becomes personal, waking up to discover root causes of chronic diseases. And those often fall into the realm of environmental medicine. So it's becoming more well known, not well known enough, and it behooves us to keep educating families. And it might be families that push this education agenda even back to their own providers.
Yeah. Well, this is what I love about your book because you're directing it at families. It's written for the parents, not, I mean, clinicians need to read it also for sure. I want to jump right into you have a survey for parents and practitioners, and it's brilliant. It's easy. You were talking about how a pediatrician is so limited in time. I mean, I did pediatrics for 35 years, and yes, it's so hard to get done everything you're supposed to do to check off all the various boxes so you can get insurance to cover the visit that you're not left with any time to do important education. Let's talk about your survey. It's available at gmoscience.org/PEHQ/. You have in there in that survey, and I was wondering if we could just go through these important points. I think there was just about 10 or 12 in there. These indicators of poor metabolizers. As a parent, I mean, I have a clue to some of that because this is my world, but as a parent, what does that mean? Maybe start with that one, indicators of poor metabolizers.
So yeah, so this was birth, from the idea. This is birth from an idea that I was working with the National Association of Environmental Medicine. I was working with them, and they were working on an environmental health questionnaire, and it was like 10 pages long. And I said, "Hey, fellas, this isn't going to work for children or families. It's too long, too complicated, and not necessarily relevant because, as you and I have said probably a million times, children are not mini adults." So during COVID, I want to give a bit of this backstory. I was so horrified at a unified narrative that families were receiving that I created this environmental health bill of rights. And from that, I created this pediatric environmental health questionnaire. My goal was to get enrolled 1,000 families and then write a study. Now, surveys aren't medicine, but they are great indicators. And so this was designed for families that they can do on their own to indicate how their child is doing. Simple parent survey. So simple 10 questions. And I was trying to look at all the different environmental factors. And I have distributed it. I've got maybe 80 responses back so far, not enough to really the power up that survey the way I was hoping for 1,000 responses. And then I wanted to metabolize it by age, sex, location, where in the US. This is for mostly the US, not abroad. Where in the US people were from. Was I seeing a preponderance more from Iowa than Mississippi or stuff like that? Anyway, not quite there. And I invite people to take the survey, and I collect all those.
gmoscience.org/PEHQ. Is that where they go for the
That's where they
survey?
go. They can fill it out. It's totally anonymous. I don't want to know your name, your child's name. Age and sex is helpful, if you can comply with that, and then fill out the questionnaire. Of the 60 I've received back so far, almost all the children, I'd say 80% were toxic.
To our viewers, please go take that survey because I just did it today and I learned a lot. It's quick. It's like 12 points. So just by taking it, you will be informed about these key factors, some of which I was not tuning into for my own health. But finish out on indicators of poor metabolizers because that one's sort of still a puzzle to me.
So the kind of things that, and I have to admit, I haven't pulled the survey up to look at the questions I asked. I designed that study in 2022. I haven't looked at it, what I wrote, but there are indicators that parents can look at if a kid's not metabolizing well. And it has to do with how they're sleeping, sleep indicators, things they may see on their physical exam, whether there's dark circles under the eyes, whether the hair quality, skin quality, etc. And so they can actually score these questions. And indirectly, I'm looking for whether children might have genetic SNPs, like they can't process, they can't methylate, like MTHFR. That's what you and I are looking for. But parents can score it, based on these different questions. So I designed it so that they can become educated, but with the idea that if pediatricians could get this information prior to the family coming in, just as we do ACE questionnaires, adverse childhood experiences, right? Look, we use those questionnaires. We have teen questionnaires. That if parents could do that prior, it would make our job so easy. So if the parents fill it up before the visit, and you see out of 10 questions, they got 8 positives, yeses, like almost all toxic responses, that's an area that you need to hone in on the family. Now you say, Michelle, I do not have time to go over to all the things you talked about. Well, perhaps you reference my book, or perhaps you give them some of the handouts that I've been created, or you create your own handouts. So parents have to become partners in reducing the toxic load. It can't just be the provider, whether it's a pediatrician, a naturopath, or whomever the family is seeing, that we have to work collaboratively to reduce the toxic load. It can't just be us. It's too big an issue. Also, additionally, maybe this is a plug here for getting off the couch and turning off Netflix. We're working locally, but we want to also work globally. So I'm asking families, yes, please correct what's going on in your own home. Absolutely. Start with your N of 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, whatever your family configuration is. But can you go bigger? Can we take this to your PTA, your school? Can you write a petition? Can you sign petitions? Can you march? What can you do? So everybody can do a little something. So I am hoping that this becomes a parent pediatrician partnership to create awareness, education, and action on changing the environmental toxic load. I want to say a shout out to Secretary Kennedy, who has been doing great work bringing these environmental toxicants to the forefront, like food dyes. Those are neurotoxicants. Thank you, Secretary Kennedy. Talking about various adjuvants and vaccines. Need I even go there? Paul, you wrote a fabulous book on Vax Facts about that. Those are the toxic metals: aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and bringing them in our food. We spoke on our last episode about infant formula and toxic metals. So thank you, Secretary Kennedy. So bringing awareness, but it's more than just awareness. I want to see action.
If we could get this into pediatric offices, and I know what would make it work if pediatricians can get paid for administering it. And I don't know how we do that, but it works. Surveys that can be done passively by the parents while they're waiting in the waiting room, and this one only takes a few minutes. If those get paid, and there are several that are, then they're going to universally do it, because bottom lines are tough in pediatrics, overhead is high. Anyway, back to the key indicators. I'm going to touch on a few with you. You can expand or not on them. How about allergens?
So allergens are an indicator of toxic exposures and allergic reactions that parents might see in their kids, and they think it's just pollen. May not always be. Goopy noses, itchy eyes, certainly asthma, reactive airway disease, and even skin reactions can be allergy induced, like certain kind of eczema, so kind of thick, itchy skin that children develop. It's super common, not normal, usually reflects a gut issue. So these are indicators of exposures. And what parents may not know is that the allergens can form with their children's own immune system and cause immunotoxicants that are really hard to eliminate. And this constant immune stimulation causes chronic inflammation. And, if the gut's not working, the brain's not working, and the skin is a good indicator. So allergens are a very good way of knowing if your kid is being environmentally exposed. As we mentioned on the last episode, air pollution is one of the key drivers of environmental toxicity in children. And we know that worse for kids who live in urban environments. It seems to affect more the underserved, kids who live near busy streets. So those pollutants are big drivers of environmental disease in children, and leading not just to respiratory diseases, can lead to a whole host of diseases. But asthma takes the charge, because 1 out of 5 to 1 out of 9 children are now having asthma, and some asthmatic conditions are actually even autoimmune in nature. So common, not normal. Sick is the new normal. So these are some of the things that parents can look for. And I remember I had one 5-year-old that I was taking care of who had severe environmental allergies. It was very toxic. And we were talking about it, and she said, "But Dr. Perro, everybody has allergies." And that was her 5-year-old perception. Like, we all have this. Like, why is it such a big deal? I'm like, oh no, we all don't have goopy noses and itchy eyes.
Although if you go to the pediatrician with any of these chronic things, they'll say, "Oh yeah, it's normal." Common does not mean normal. It is normal to be totally well without any of these problems. I loved what you shared last episode with plants in the home as a way of cleaning the air. That's just brilliant. All right, what about solvents?
Oh, solvents. Oh dear. So
What are solvents?
Yeah, solvents are the industrial oils that they use, for example, commonly in food. They use something like hexane. You'll see often that ANE ending or ENE ending. They are used commonly, for example, in foods to extract certain elements. They're even used in infant formulas, hexanes. They're used in industrial food coatings called appeal, benzene. Those are other solvents. For example, you might be exposed to some of these solvents if you live near gas stations, right? Gas stations as well. So these
or the airport.
Yes, or an airport. So they're ubiquitous they could be in your food, maybe not so much in your water, but certainly in your air. And I worry mostly about the food and these, and like, for example, even in plant-based milks, they use hexanes to extract certain elements out of, let's say, soy. So this is not ideal, and certainly not good for kids. Solvents, unfortunately, are carcinogenic.
Are you saying I need to read labels?
I now teach parents how to read a label. Yes, that it shouldn't be that way. Now, labels are interesting because many things are not labeled correctly. And so the Yes. So, for example, genetically modified foods are often the genetically modified product is not on the label. And that was from an act that the federal government passed in 2016. But now there are certain genetically modified elements that are labeled called bioengineered. So, yes, we have to learn to read labels. But if we ask our parents and our families to veer away from ultra processed foods, we would diminish this problem significantly. It's ultra processed foods that have the significant number of whether it's solvents, other products, other toxicants in there, emulsifiers, things that destroy the microbiome. We discussed that last time. That we would be doing our kids a great service, not to mention school lunches. And we can get into that school lunch issue.
Right. How do I avoid pesticides? That's one on your survey.
Oh, yeah, avoiding pesticides. So, home gardeners, don't use them. You know, you've got weeds, bend over and pull them. You can spray them a little with white vinegar. You can even use hot water, boiling water. But I'd say, listen, it would benefit all of us to bend over and pull your weeds if you have to. Please don't pull the dandelions. They are super beneficial for pollinators, and you can make a great dandelion tea. And I include that recipe too in the book. So, home gardens, organic food now I don't think it's an option, it's a must. And people say, well, it's so expensive, organic foods. I say, yeah, we're more expensive. Or missing a day of work because your kid is sick, that's expensive. So you can buy in bulk organics, you have to cook. And just you've got to stick to the green and white label. And I even like the RO label for regenerative organic because foods can be organic, but not be have high enough nutrient density. But I don't want to get overcomplicated. So we stick to non-pesticide containing foods. Can some be contaminated? Yes, but you're always better off eating organic than conventionally grown whenever you can. Even I'm not even sure I agree with the clean 15 dirty dozen all the time. So if families would go to farmers markets, for example, and they shop at the end of the day, farmers will often offload produce in bulk that is imperfect or because they don't want to take it back. So you can make great deals at the end of a day at a farmer's market. And in California, if you have SNAP, which are these the old food stamps, they'll do 2 to 1. So you get double bucks on your SNAP if at farmers markets.
That is a great tip.
It's a great deal. So buy ugly imperfects. They sell the same nutrient density, maybe not so attractive, but
Yeah.
Affordable.
Phenomenal. Okay, this next one's a tough one. How do I know if my home has mold?
Ooh, the mold question. Wow. So
That's on your survey.
I know. So often you can see mold. You'll see the black mold, often in moist, dark places or in bathrooms, in kitchens. And you'll see it in the grout in the tile, for example. You'll see it around window frames in areas that have cold weather. As parents shut down the windows, you'll see it grow in there. And if you see it on your windowsill in your bathroom, it may reflect a deeper mold problem. Years ago, we could handle mold. Now we've become sensitized. And Dr. Senef and I just got into a whole back and forth discussion how glyphosate is exacerbating the mold problem. We were just
Really?
talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we were just
I,
getting into this.
It seems to me almost every house has some mold, especially if you look at bathrooms, like you said, around sinks. And what do you do about it? I mean,
So,
assuming you've realized, yeah, there's a little bit of black here and there around the edges.
so hopefully you don't have the kid who's mold sensitive. And mold sensitivity is, again, one of those topics that's not taught to us in medical school. Maybe they're touching upon it now. It is affecting so many children who are mold sensitive, and oftentimes it's unidentified because the symptoms can be vague and look like other things: headaches, foggy brain, tummy aches, just fatigue. Right? Those symptoms can be just about anything, and it often goes undiagnosed. Mold testing is expensive and not done easily, and it's done out of mainstream labs. There are some mainstream labs that you can do for mold, but and it has to be urine mostly. You concentrate a lot of these mold toxins. Okay, so if you see a little bit of black mold, one of my favorite tools is, and I don't think I wrote about it in the book on how to get rid of mold and cleaning solutions, is to use borax.
Hmm.
Your grandma had about 25 different ways to use borax, 100 years ago. And what you do is you can make a borax paste. You could even throw a little baking soda in the borax, and you make a paste out of it, and you can put it on the moldy grout, for example. You leave it and then rinse it off. Borax will take care of a lot of issues in your home. Please don't leave it out for the children to eat it. Wash your hands after you use it. It's relatively non-toxic. I mean, you don't want to be like, drenched in the stuff, but borax will get rid of your ants, clean your mold. It will clean a lot of household cleaning can be done with borax.
One of your survey questions is about plastics. It seems like that's a growing problem.
Boy, who's not talking about plastics, particularly microplastics now? They've been found in our brains, in our guts, in our food, and in our salt. I used to years ago recommend a certain kind of salt for families, Himalayan pink sea salt, but now it turns out that sea salts are high in microplastic content. And so now I've switched to more salt beds, Diamond, Jacobson, real salt that come from salt beds, like from Utah. But anyway, what's the problem with these microplastics? They're endocrine disruptors. And for sure, and I've even read that they can be found in plaques in adults, in cardiac plaques, and they've been found in brain tissue, in certain neurocognitive disorders. And so we do not want these endocrine disruptors in our children. We have seen a rise in almost all endocrine related disorders in kids, whether it's metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, whether it's thyroid issues, autoimmune disease, autoimmune thyroiditis. So all these issues are increasing in children, for sure. And so we want to get the phthalates, the microplastics out. And we know that we have, I don't quote me on this study. I remember reading a study several years ago, finding parabens in breast tissue in women with breast cancer. So these microplastics, we are now in plastic inundation state. And I tell every family, whether your kid is plastic toxic or not, reduce plastic use in your home, however you can. Find ways to reduce the plastic use.
So the worst of the worst causes of plastic exposure, I think of microwaving anything in plastic. Probably shouldn't microwave, period. But some of these fast, easy prep foods for busy parents, it's just something, it's clearly in plastic, and you're told to pop it in the microwave, or even like microwave popcorn. What are the worst sources of plastics that people might not be aware of?
So you're right. The microwave, I tell people ditch the microwave. And in schools across America, they take these plastic wrapped lunches and then microwave them. And so literally the plastics are dripping into 30 million school lunches served every day to our kids. And some kids are eating 1, 2, 3 meals a day at school. That just kind of makes me crazy. And then you have kids with leaky gut, and the plastics cross the leaky gut. So other sources of plastics in the home, the baby bottles, for sure. And then I've seen families microwave the baby bottles to heat them up, the plastic baby bottles. Not so good. Yeah. Fast foods are often wrapped in plastics. Not another good thing. Our fruits and vegetables come in plastics, or our meat in the supermarket. Maybe if you can go to the butcher where they actually still wrap the meat in paper and get it in paper. There are plastics added to a lot of personal care products. So people need to look at their personal care products as well. Simplify it. Simplify whether you're using shampoos, conditioners, soaps, and all those products need to be carefully sourced in your children and yourself. And you save a lot of money too when you simplify your products, because they're in there. And especially the makeup industry, an average woman uses 20 products on herself per day, the average American woman. And a lot of women, if you look in their bathroom, have this makeup drawer with makeups in there, like tons of makeup. Ladies, I don't know what's going on. I don't want to signal out women here, but and a lot of those makeup products get contaminated with microbes after about 6 months, even before that probably. So a lot of that stuff is no good. Just don't buy it. We don't even want to put it in the landfill. So there's another source. They can be in pharmaceuticals. Plastics, that's another hidden source. Yeah, and of course, let's not forget toys.
Especially the ones that are going in the mouth.
And so Um, Children could use less toys. I made that mistake, Parent 101. I bought way too many toys for my kids, but I wish I could do a redo on some of those things I did. There's no redo, like a reset button. Can I just reset?
Oh my gosh, I did it all wrong. So as we're chatting about this, folks, and you're listening, going, "Wow, this is too much." Just chip away at it. That's what it takes.
Okay. We made all these mistakes, and even though we're pediatricians, Paul, we didn't come with a handbook like this telling us to avoid those plastic toys and stuff. I There are so many things I would redo again if I had the opportunity, but all I can do now is educate your lucky listeners going forward.
Order Making Our Children Well with this is a book you just have to have, and it's a resource. It's easy. The back is full of all sorts of great stuff. We're running low on time. I wanted you to maybe just prioritize a few actions that you really feel like parents should
Mhm.
absolutely do.
Yeah, so if you look in the book, I wrote in the book, I have my environmental health bill of rights. I think there are 7 key factors that families could just focus on, then we would all be healthier. And you, as the parent, are also the consumer. Women spend 85% of the household budget. So we ladies, we're driving the economic charge here. So again, organic in the food department as best you can. This is a marathon. We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for change where you can in your own family. Cleaning up your water. We talked about water filters last time, and certainly try to get the best filter your family can afford. Air pollution matters. If you can get a HEPA filter in your home, particularly your child's bedroom, do it. If not, or in addition to, get the plants. We discussed them last time today. Spider plants, snake plants, fiscus is another good one. Peace lilies. These are all plants that can clean up the air, and they'll take out formaldehyde and other toxicants as well. I have them circling my office. EMFs. Turn off the Wi-Fi at night. Hardwire your children's devices if you have a high schooler, and you yourself need to be mindful because you model the behavior that your children will pick up eventually. Be careful with medical technologies, experimental medical technologies, especially if they're genetically modified. I'd say no. Say no to any immunomodulatory, genetically altering pharmaceutical that you possibly can. So new pharmaceuticals. I talk about e-waste. We are generating more e-waste, and that e-waste is going to countries where children and women are exposed. Different countries, such as Brazil, certain countries in Africa, China, and children have such high level of toxic metals, trying to extract various metals from the e-waste, computers, phones, etc. And last but not least is emotional toxicity, which I didn't put in my environmental health bill of rights, but I should rewrite it, and social media. I am a very concerned pediatrician about the effects of social media, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, wherever your kids are hanging out these days, and the effects on their health, as well as now, I didn't write it originally, but I would sure write it now, is AI. My opinion, Paul, is that no child should be on AI until college. It has been shown to impair cognitive development, help children make very poor choices, and we unfortunately have read about AI leading a suicide. And I don't know the specifics of that, but certainly raises up my radar. But I think so. Those are the things that I would have families focus on.
That's a great summary. Thank you so much again for coming back and helping us with this great information. Where can people find your information and your final message of hope for today? It is such a complex world, but I think we can have hope once we understand the kind of information you share in your book.
Paul, first of all, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for having me on so we can share in these conversations with listeners. Getting the word out there is imperative. I want to, if we're asking folks to really make choices themselves, we have to give them tools, right? We just can't say, okay, here you go. So please visit gmoscience.org, my 501c3, co-founded with 2 amazing ladies in 2014. And I have tons of parent information up there, handouts, videos. I have a pediatric regenerative course that folks can take. I did a V symposium on COVID vaccine several years ago that's still relevant. I have the New MDs podcast up there that I run once a month, and Dr. Elizabeth Montber is joining me next week. That's one thing. The book, Making Our Children Well, it's on Amazon. I self-published. Boy, was that painful, but I'm glad it's done. Thank you. One and done. Well, two and done now. I think I'm done with books. And lastly, so if people can share these podcasts, the ones that you do, please share them. The larger our network, we are greater in numbers, and we can grow and kind of disseminate this information. And I would say what's making our children sick is not a mystery. Why children have chronic disease, environmental toxicants are driving the charge. And the first step in environmental toxicity is lowering the toxic load. There's no magic formula, pill, herb, homeopathic. You have to kind of remove the toxins. That's the first step. So I invite every family to take the challenge.
Wonderful. Well, I can add, those of you who've been on this show for a while know my latest book that I wrote with Dee Dee Hoover, Vax Facts, makes it pretty clear that the number one environmental toxin of all is what's coming in vaccines, because you are injecting it, you're bypassing the body's natural way of keeping toxins out of the body. So keep that in mind also. You can coach with us at kidsfirstforever.com. And of course, we always enjoy having you on the show. Look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again, Michelle.
Oh, thank you for having me.
My name is Lindsay Beckham, and this is my son, Creed Beckham.
Hi, Creed.
Can you say hi?
Hi. And you've come here today to tell us about Creed's story. I want to go back before, when you were pregnant, or even before you were pregnant. What were your views on vaccines?
Well, I actually worked in the healthcare field, so I actually administered vaccines the way that I was taught to do. When someone came in with an injury, of course, the first thing we were taught to ask is, are you up to date on your tetanus? And of course, then we would give them a tetanus shot if they were not up to date. And that's just kind of what was ingrained in my mind. They're safe and effective, they're needed. And so I was always at our doctor's appointments ready to have him vaccinated. When I was pregnant, he's a twin, and so he has a twin sister, and because of that I was considered high risk, so we saw a maternal fetal medicine specialist, and around 29 weeks pregnant I was discharged from there because they had been able to visualize both he and his twin sister's brains and all chambers of their hearts, and they were completely normal, completely healthy. And so everything looked great.
Did you receive,
No, that's okay.
flu vaccine or any vaccines during the RoGAM shot?
No, I did not have to have the RoGAM, but I think I did get an updated Tdap when I was pregnant with the twins.
Okay, and then let's talk about their birth. How did that
So they were born at, my water broke at home. I was able to have a regular birth. I did not have to have a cesarean section. Thankfully, I had prayed so hard about that. Their dad passed away from a heart-related issue that we were unaware of exactly 2 months before they were born, to the day before they were born. And so, like I said, my water broke at home, and went in, had them at 36 weeks and 4 days, which is 37 weeks is considered full term for twins. He weighed 4'9", his twin sister weighed 5'10", completely healthy. They did not have to go to the NICU. Their blood sugar was regulated. They were eating and drinking enough. Everything looked and sounded great. No problems whatsoever.
Do you know if they received
They did receive the vitamin K and Hep B at birth. And we were discharged from the hospital after 2 days, just like you would with any birth. So we went home and they did great. We had no issues. We went in for our 2-month checkup, well baby visit, and we got our 2-month vaccines. And within 24 hours, he was lethargic, crying, wouldn't eat. We saw her 2-month appointment was on a Wednesday afternoon, and so that following Friday morning, a lot of doctors' offices closed around noon, and so I had called and gotten him in to see a pediatrician. Their pediatrician was not there, so we saw a different one in the practice, and she heard what she thought was a slight heart murmur, diagnosed him with an ear infection, and I found that slightly odd because we had just been there a day and a half earlier and everything had checked out perfect. He sounded great. There was no heart murmur mentioned. And so she told me not to worry about that because he was running high fever, and with the high fever sometimes that can cause a heart murmur. So we went home, he got better, we went back for our 4-month checkup, and at that point there was a pretty significant heart murmur, and we were at the Children's Hospital first thing the next morning for an echocardiogram only, just to see kind of what was going on. And so that day at the hospital where we were having the echocardiogram, it was very obvious that there was an issue. The lady that scanned him kept scanning the same area over and over, and when she finished, she told me to hold on because she was calling in the on-call doctor. And I said, no, we're here for just an echocardiogram only. And she said, well, they're going to want to talk to you. And so the on-call doctor came in and told me that he had a pretty moderate to large hole between the bottom 2 chambers of his heart. It was about 7 millimeters, which I now know as a ventricular septal defect, or VSD. He told me that he would eventually need open heart surgery. It was too large to correct itself on its own, which was a devastating blow for me, given the fact that at this point he's 4 months old, and this is like right at 6 months after his father had passed away from a heart-related issue. So that was
scary.
Yeah, very scary, very, very scary. And I really didn't put everything together at that point. We left the hospital. We were told, go home, try to gain weight. Let's see if we can get him to a good healthy weight, and around 9 to 12 months we'll do the open heart surgery and hopefully be able to go in through his side, not have to crack his sternum, be able to do a less invasive surgery. So we went home, and that was the plan, but it did not go as planned. There was failure to thrive at that point. Of course, he had just received 4-month vaccines the day before. So he quit eating completely. He would just be exhausted from trying to eat. And so we were losing weight instead of gaining weight. And 5 months old, we were in congestive heart failure and admitted to the hospital. We even put a feeding tube down, hoping and praying that he could just gain some weight and get stronger and have that less invasive surgery, but that just did not happen. So at 5 months old in June, he was born in December, and the following June he had open heart surgery. And thankfully that went well. They were able to repair the hole, and so now we just have annual cardiology visits concerning the heart issue. Because of the open heart surgery, he was on a delayed vaccine schedule. But at around the 18-month appointment, they said he needed to be caught up. So he received even more vaccines than what a normal 18-month-old would get. And after that appointment, I brought home a different child that day. He seemed as though he was struggling to breathe by the time we even got home. His breathing was labored and fast, and so I took him to our chiropractor, and we talked about some ways to detox his body, which we did, and I credit that to probably saving his life. He wouldn't look at me anymore. I mean, even through open heart surgery, this child slept great. He was a champ. He smiled. He made eye contact. He was very loving, affectionate. After the 18-month shots, he wouldn't look at me anymore. Screamed. I mean, for 2 weeks straight, it was this blood-curdling scream that I now know is like the DTaP scream. He would spin in circles. He would grab his feet and his hands, his extremities, and just pull at them and just scream as if he was in severe amounts of pain.
Did you go to the pediatrician and ask them what's wrong with my child?
They told me it was completely normal and he was throwing tantrums and to play some calming music. That's the answer I got. They wouldn't do the blood work that I had asked them to do. At this point, I had realized what's happened, and he started the head banging, which I now believe he had some swelling on the brain that he was trying to relieve. And he would just beat his head on any hard surface he could find. He had bruises and knots. And I thought, CPS is going to come take my child because they're going to think he's being beaten. And I mean, I knew in my gut that he would be on the spectrum. He was, he was just a different child. Shortly after that, I got a phone call from the daycare. He was at daycare, and they had called me to come get him, said he was screaming in pain, and his testicle area was really red and swollen. So I go and get him. I call our pediatrician, and she told me to get him to the hospital right away because it could be what they call a testicular torsion, and he may need an emergency surgery. We got there, they did an ultrasound. It was not a torsion, but what they found was that he had what they called hydrocele in the lower part of his abdomen, and he would need another surgery to correct that. And so at this point, I started to really look back at dates and times, and it all made complete sense that these shots literally ate holes through his body. I remember at that 18-month appointment feeling this knot in my stomach that I'd never felt before, and just feeling like I wanted to throw up when they came in to give the shots. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's the Holy Spirit talking to moms and giving them this feeling of something's not right, because something's not right. I did a deep dive into vaccines and ingredients, and listening to other people's stories, and I've heard the same story from so many parents, and learning about the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which we know now that only about 1% or less is actually reported because they make it so very difficult to do so. So I started to speak out, and I've been called a conspiracy theorist. I've been called reckless. I've been shamed, and people have attempted to humiliate me. But his story is worth telling. Parents need to know. Parents need to be informed. Parents need to do the research and know that the people telling you they need these shots are the people who are being paid to tell you that they need these shots, and they probably can't even tell you why or what the side effects could be or what the ingredients are. So I kind of have made that my mission. Started working with MPVR here in Mississippi Parents for Vaccine Rights, and showing up at the Capitol to try and get a religious exemption here. At the time we didn't have one, and so that I think is probably one of the greatest victories since what has happened to Creed, is the fact that we now have that.
Were you able to continue putting them in daycare after you chose to stop vaccinating?
Well, they were up to date after 18-month vaccines and wouldn't need any more until kindergarten, until they were 5.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, my oldest daughter was going into 7th grade, which of course they made the law, I guess maybe 15 years or so ago, to put the Tdap for 7th graders. They had to have that to enter 7th grade, and I said my kids will never get another vaccine over my dead body. And so that's when we went to a different pediatrician and tried to get a medical exemption, and he said that really pretty much the only way you can get a medical exemption is if you have a documented injury, and or if you have a autism diagnosis. So we saw we had someone test, and he was diagnosed with autism before he started kindergarten. So we had medical exemptions.
Okay. Were you able to get those for all your kids?
I was able to get those for all 5 of my children, yes, because of his diagnosis.
Yeah. Because at this point, your husband has passed. I mean, that must be a very even scarier situation as well. You're put into this corner.
Right.
Because you're a single mom, and you've got how many? 3 children?
5.
5?
5.
5 children.
5.
These are your youngest.
I have one son that's younger than the twins, and he is not vaccinated at all, and he is the healthiest. He walked first earlier than any of my others. He talked earlier than my others. He eats better than my others. It's a night and day difference. There's been no ear infections, no sickness, no nothing that if he has a sniffle here or there, it's nothing that he doesn't kick, immediately, just about.
Right. So in your home study, who would you say is the healthiest?
Oh, definitely my non-vaccinated child, for sure. I mean, by leaps and bounds. Obviously, we're not vaccinated. I'm not vaccinating any of them anymore, so I think that's helping when it comes to even just regular, like I was saying, ear infections or the common cold. It's like they just have healthier immune systems now than other children their age that aren't being vaccinated. And of course, I knowing what I know now, it's so obvious.
Creed, do you know what? Can you tell us how old you are?
7.
7?
Yeah.
And what do you want to be when you grow up?
firefighter.
Oh, it's very brave of you. I think you'll be a wonderful firefighter one day.
So he's repeating kindergarten, but he's doing so well and very high functioning. He is verbal. He does now make eye contact. You know, it's tough when you kind of have to grieve, you know, who he would have been, because he's never been the same. We work really hard at regulating emotions, and we have a hard time sometimes doing that. So, you know, it's hard. I've had to really work hard at forgiving myself for not being more informed and doing the research more myself. You just automatically think that, you know, your pediatrician and your school system have your child's best interest at heart. And, you know, what I've learned is that's just not the case.
But you're not alone in that.
No.
And many mothers were lied to.
Right.
And if they told you the truth, you know the decision you would have made
Right.
would be different.
And we had some great women that were very helpful to me, especially at the time when I was so confused and didn't know what was happening, your mother being one of them. And of course, Mary Jo over here just were my rocks that I was able to go to and, you know, verified that I wasn't crazy.
Yeah. Before we close out, I just, you know, if you could have, you know, one thing you could say to that young mother who is thinking, well, what about these, you know, maybe they decided they don't want a vaccine, but then there's all these scary things being thrown at them and it feels like everyone's against them. What would you say to that mom?
Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut and pray. Pray about it and go to the Lord, and, you know, don't take what a doctor's office tells you as being the Holy Grail. Do the research, because it's out there.
Well, thank you so much. And
Thank
we'll get
you.
to meet him to sign his name on
Yes,
the bus.
absolutely.